Greetings, Dragon Ball fans, and welcome to another What If. This What If was suggested by Salaal Khan. While MasakoX has not only done a What If Nappa Turned Good and changed the Future Trunks timeline to match, also Geekdom 101 has done a What If Nappa Survived, which is much closer to what I would have come up with, I thought I'd try taking things in a slightly different direction. So, as suggested, What If Vegeta Spared Nappa? We pick up the story during the Saiyan Saga battle, yet again, with Nappa lying helplessly at Vegeta's feet. Vegeta glares down at him, clearly disgusted at his failure. He then steps over the broken man, who is left to watch as Vegeta and Goku start to duke it out. While everyone else is distracted by Vegeta's Ozaru transformation, Nappa pulls out his controller and summons his pod. He drags himself inside, punches some buttons, and blasts off. Arriving on Frieza Planet 79, Nappa is dragged out of the pod by some techs and dumped into a healing chamber. When he finally exits, he is met by Kiwi. After some requisite gloating, Kiwi then shoves Nappa down the hallway to Vegeta's healing chamber. Nappa is shocked to see the prince's state. That low-class trash of a Saiyan managed to best him too? But Nappa then remembers Vegeta glaring down at him, like he was trash as well. He shakes his head to clear the memory. He was just toying with us, Nappa says quietly to himself. What was that? Kiwi asks mockingly. Nothing, Nappa says as he settles down against a wall. When Vegeta wakes, the first thing he sees is the big guy sitting quietly against the opposite wall, staring at his feet. He thought he saw a pod leaving, and despite the man's failure, if he's honest with himself, Vegeta can't really blame the guy for bailing. That upstart Kakarot was something else. Besides, there's bigger fish to fry right now, and the big idiot might come in handy. Curie is, of course, also standing by, and starts berating them both for going off mission. Oh, Frieza will have words when he gets back. Nappa perks up at the mention of Frieza. He's not waiting for them now? Where'd he go? They are both stunned to hear that the tyrant is on his way to Namek to wish for immortality. Vegeta glances at Nappa, and to his surprise, sees a blank mask. He was worried he would have to do something to stop Nappa from blurting out, but he's just standing there. Vegeta tries to make light of things to placate Kiwi. After a while they are allowed to leave, and they find a corner to talk and plan. Nappa again surprises Vegeta by speaking first. They need to either get to Namek fast, or find a relatively quiet corner of the universe to hide in. Frieza won't take too kindly to their little excursion, and if he gets immortality, there'll be no stopping him. Vegeta agrees and lays out his plan. Nappa will create a diversion, while Frieza steals a pod and heads to Namek. After a moment, watching Nappa quietly sitting there, Vegeta angrily tells him to get going. There's no time to lose. Nappa smiles and gets up. He looks back at the prince, and can he see that same look of disgust on the man's face as when he stood over Nappa's broken body? He saw the killing intent then. Why hadn't he done it? Nappa shakes his head again and walks off towards the armory that Vegeta had told him to hit. After donning some fresh body armor and a scouter, he goes to settle in a corner out of sight to wait for the signal. No, he's not going to wait, he thinks. The prince is done with him, isn't he? Well, he's done with the prince. Nappa goes over to the weapons charging locker and opens it. He takes aim at the fully charged blaster gauntlets. Instead of releasing the blast straight into the energy packs, he remembers that little bald guy's attack. It had twisted and curved, following the Cyberman. If that puny human could do it. Nappa pushes as much energy as he can into it. Then, with the large, brightly glowing ball floating just above the weapons, Nappa carefully closes the lid and he backs away, concentrating. Creeping along the hallways, he is starting to perspire. Manipulating energy like this is way harder than they made it look. As he steps out onto the auxiliary landing pad, he sighs in relief. The momentary distraction, however, proves too much, and he lets go of the ball of energy, and the building shudders with an explosion. With the platform suddenly listing slightly, Nappa boards the first ship he can get into, throwing out the surprised maintenance tech. The flight controls aren't that different from their normal attack pods, so he punches in and the craft blasts off. As the ship accelerates away, a second explosion rips through what's left of the facility. It vanishes in a mushroom cloud. Cleaning up after your mess, eh, Vegeta? He asks an empty flight deck. Vegeta had told him what armory to hit, even what locker to blow up. Did he know the reactor would go up too, or was that just a lucky break? Maybe I'll ask him someday. This ship is a scout ship. A bit more roomy than those tiny pods, and almost as fast. faster than Frieza's main ships at least. After a couple of weeks, stewing in his own thoughts, Nappa steps out onto the surface of Namek. He taps the scouter a few times and spots Frieza and his men milling around, well over the horizon. He flies off toward a smaller, nearby cluster of low powers. As he flies, Nappa wonders how well he can keep his power suppressed. Thinking about what those humans in Kakarot seemed to do, he had set the scouter to a new purpose. Putting it on the deck, he sat in front of it, watching the numbers fluctuate as he pushed his energy down as hard as he could. Saiyans aren't known for stealth, but if he wants to stand a chance surviving against Lord Frieza and his men, it will certainly come in handy. Arriving at the village, he is met by some very cautious Namekians. They have already sensed attacks going on their other villages, and this man has a similar, almost malicious energy about him. Nappa's first instinct is to barge in and make them give him the ball. But after taking that first step, he again sees Vegeta staring down at him, across the table at him, like he's nothing, tool to be used and discarded. The Namekian facing him senses some of this conflict and steps forward. He takes a chance, saying that they don't really want to fight, and besides, even if they did, they can tell he's hiding his true power. Caught off guard by the almost friendly conversation, Nappa pauses, now uncertain how to proceed. Should he take a chance of his own? What does crushing everything around you actually do for you? He starts to tell them about that evil Frieza and what he's here for. Mori, however, has a feeling that Nappa is hiding something. Being pressed, Nappa then explains why he's here. He admits that Vegeta was probably right. He was useless, so easily beaten down by that low-class warrior, but he's going to make up for it. A little Namekian comes up and asks him what he will do when he gets immortality. He'd never actually thought about it. Vegeta was the one who wanted that. Nappa just liked fighting and grinding his foes under his boot. But that Kakarot guy, he was a Saiyan too, and yet he was nothing like that. They are interrupted by the arrival of 3 new Namekians. The warriors have arrived, and they approach Nappa and Dende. Mori tells them all of what Nappa had said, and they turn to face him. Do they want to fight now? Pointing to the scouter, Nappa tells them that that would probably be a bad idea. Any fighting will just draw attention. He takes off the scouter, and after staring at it for a moment, he tosses it to Mori. He explains that these things detect power levels, so best they can do is to push their energy down and avoid unnecessary battle. Like what you're doing now, the biggest warrior says coldly, glaring down at Nappa. Why don't they do the same, he says, gesturing over his shoulder. Nappa goes on to talk about his time before, and then on Earth. How hiding your power level was never really a thing. Then, battling the humans and that other Namekian, he wasn't sure how, but they knew things he'd never even thought about. A couple of weeks in front of the scouter, actually trying to suppress his power, had opened his eyes in that respect. Man, he really likes talking, doesn't he? Mori is curious to hear about these other Namekians on other worlds. He'd very much like to meet these wayward brethren, as he knows that long ago, Namekians were a starfaring race. Nappa's awkward laugh brings Mori back to the present. Yeah, about that. He is interrupted by something off in the distance. Mori is also looking in that direction, having sensed another village going dark, all life forces extinguished. He looks down at Nappa to see he is staring in that direction too, a puzzled look on his face. The first step to sensing other powers, it seems, is being able to sense your own. A warrior steps forward and says that they need to get the Dragonball out of there. Mori, however, takes off the scouter and says that it won't matter. These things can see the ball's energy. Scratching his head, Nappa suggests that they try and bury it somewhere. Deep enough, and the scouter might not be able to pick it up anymore. So Mori hands the ball off to a warrior and nods at a mountain in the distance. The warrior flies off to that mountain and disappears. Mori then puts the scouter back on and taps it a few times, trying to find the ball. Failing to do so, he hands the scouter back to Nappa. He can't find the ball either. Mori smiles and steps away to stare into space. Dende turns back to Nappa and thanks him. He's shown them the scouters and how to defeat them. Mori is telling Guru, and Guru will tell everyone else. That nasty Frieza guy's not going to get any more balls. And if the villages scatter, well, there won't be anything to find but empty huts. Nappa smiles, feeling a warmth within himself, feeling happy? Is that what drives that Kakarot guy? Is that the source of that low-class Saiyan's power? Fighting for others? He'd always seen that as a weakness. The worst kind. All that sniveling and crying and compassion. Dende smiles up at him, sensing some of the gears churning in the big guy's thick skull. His inner turmoil is interrupted when that warrior returns. Mori then tells him that someone wants to meet this man. After a brief but heated argument, the three warriors tell Nappa to come with them. He bids farewell to his new... what? Well, they're not his victims, at least. This is such a weird feeling. In the back of his mind, he sees Vegeta glaring down at him, the disgust, the intent playing across the prince's face. They travel around the planet for who knows how long. It's hard to get a bearing with all these suns, but eventually he spots a thin spire of rock. As they draw closer, he can see a small house sitting on top. They land outside, and the door pops off and lifts out of the way. A huge Namekian steps out, and Nappa is frozen in place. The sense of threat emanating from this guy dwarfs the three that he came with. This new Namekian stares at him for a moment, then steps forward to greet the escort. Nail introduces himself to Nappa and directs him inside. There, he meets Guru. After an awkward silence, Nappa starts to explain things again, but Guru holds up a hand and says to stop. He asks Nappa to come closer and kneel down. Now, Nappa is many things, but he doesn't kneel for anyone. Except Frieza, but, come on, it's Frieza. Guru smiles at him and says that he can sense the conflict in the man. He explains to Nappa that he doesn't want a servant, he just wants a better picture of what they're up against. You want to read my mind or something? Nappa asks, looking down at his feet. He sees Vegeta glaring at him again. You might not like what you see. Guru asks him again to come closer. Nappa sighs and kneels down next to the giant Namekian. The world falls away as Guru's hand touches his bald head. Everything. He knows everything. All the worlds, all the lives Nappa has taken, every single one brought forward, laid out before him. Nappa falls back, collapsing to the ground as the memories wash over him. So much death, Guru gasps. Nail is then by Guru's side. He asks what he saw. After a moment, he turns to face Nappa, fists clenched. You're a monster, Nail says, stepping towards the Saiyan. Wait, Guru says weakly from behind. There's a change in him. Look closely, my son. See the man before you. Nappa looks up, tears streaming down his... Tears? What? No, this is weakness, Nappa shouts as he lunges forward, his fists caught easily by the tall Namekian. Why do I feel this weakness? This is caring, Nappa, Guru says quietly from behind the rigid warrior. You have faced your own mortality, and now you must face theirs. Nail relaxes, releasing Nappa's hands. The Saiyan drops back to the floor. He sits there, his face buried in his hands. Sometime later, he looks up as Nail offers him a hand. Guru then asks what Nappa intends to do with his newfound freedom. Will he run, or will he stay and fight? More powers are approaching, some dark, some not. After a moment, Nappa shrugs. He says he will fight. He knows Frieza, he knows the soldiers. It's not much, but it's a start. Besides, he's a Saiyan, and Saiyans do love a good fight. Nail takes him outside and away from the tower. They are met by 5 other warriors, some familiar, some not. There, Nail hands the scouter to the gathered warriors and asks Nappa to spar with him. And so we bring part 1 of this What If to a close. Nappa has made some unlikely friends in the Namekians. In doing so, the natives have abandoned their villages and hidden their treasures deep in the rocks. Frieza is no doubt having a wonderful time searching all those empty buildings. Will Nappa be able to keep this leaf turned over, or will he succumb again to his nature as a Saiyan? Find out next time on Dragonball, What If Vegeta Spared Nappa?